Long waits, waves of calls, web crashes, Social Security is breaking down. That is the headline of a Washington Post story discussing Social Security. The Social Security Administration website crashed 4 times in 10 days this month. Incidentally, the month is only 2/3 gone at this point, 3/4. How many business days have probably taken place this year? That's probably about half of the business days the website has crashed, blocking millions of retirees and disabled Americans from logging on into their online accounts because the servers were overloaded. In the field, office managers have resorted to answering phones at the front desk as receptionists because so many employees have been pushed out. However, the agency no longer has a system to monitor customers' experience with these services because that office was also eliminated as part of the supposed cost-cutting, I put in the word supposed, efforts led by Elon Musk. And the phones keep ringing and ringing. This is even before they have implemented this new rule, which will not allow you to confirm your identity via the phone, forcing people to come into offices that are already incredibly understaffed. And when you have website crashes, that is because you don't have enough people to maintain the server status. This is what their plan is. This is what their plan has been since the beginning. This is why they were talking about DEI, and they never talk about DEI anymore, because that was their wedge to get in. And USAID was the low-hanging fruit, and they just started from there and went everywhere else. But here's another story from the day before. Why DOJ is struggling to find fraud in Social Security. I think this also was in the Washington Post. You had DOJ first going out and talking about Musk's assertion that tens of millions of dead people over 100 years old are receiving Social Security benefits. Within a day or two, Lee Dudek, the, what would you call him, stooge, who was working in Social Security and decided to join Team Doge, had to come out and say, well, these individuals are not necessarily receiving benefits. Less than 1% of Social Security payments in recent years were determined to be improper, often the result of an accidental oversight or change in benefit status. This is according to a report last year by the agency's Inspector General. Incidentally, that Inspector General was fired.
Yep.
Almost 2 months ago now.
Trump cleaned house for all the inspectors general who are tasked with finding the fraud that they say that Elon Musk
fraud
is
and
now
waste.
Finding. But he's
so that number, 1% of Social Security payments, was $9 billion a year. And more than 2/3 of that, $6 billion, probably close to 7, of the mistaken payments were eventually clawed back, which means highly unlikely that it was fraud, more likely that they just got a check in the mail that they shouldn't have had, which incidentally, I think people get money in their bank account that should have been theirs, or they get a check from, I mean, that happens all the time. Another agency audit, which looked only at payments to retired workers and survivors and people with disabilities, found fraud was listed as the cause behind just 3% of improper benefit payments. Social Security, despite all of the money that flows through it, didn't make a 2024 list by the Government Accountability Office detailing 16 agencies with improper payment rates of at least 10%. Social Security is the fraud rate, even the improper payment rate is incredibly low. Right. The fraud rate is astronomically low. Again, this is an agency that serves tens upon tens of millions of people. And it has a tiny fraud rate. And why is it? Because fraud is never or rarely committed by recipients. There's some. Fraud is usually done by providers. Mm-hmm. That means businesses.
Contractors.
That report further found that 80% of all improper payments were due to just 5 government programs, including Medicare and Medicaid, but not Social Security. And is it Medicare or Medicaid recipients who are doing that fraud? No. It is doctors, ambulance companies, medical device providers who are committing the fraud. They're claiming they have patients that they didn't have. They're claiming costs that they didn't have. They're claiming, providing materials that they didn't provide. It's not recipients. Social Security is one of among the most scrutinized and audited agencies in government, with frequent probes by its 500-person Office of Inspector General. It used to be that size. It pays outside auditors to examine its book. Congress grills agency officials. Last year, a major focus, you ready for this? A major focus in congressional hearings, led by the Republicans, was not waste or fraud. It was about Social Security being too aggressive in clawing back accidental benefit overpayments. I want to repeat this. Social Security has a 1% rate of improper benefits, $9 billion worth. $6 billion of that, a little bit more, is clawed back each year because they were made just accidentally. And last year, a major focus in congressional hearings led by the Republicans was not waste or fraud. It was about Social Security being too aggressive in clawing back those accidental benefit payments.
It's the same reasoning behind their cutting of the IRS agents, is because the enforcement that would that increase funding for the IRS would be to go after rich people who are scamming the government and not paying their fair share in taxes. It's the same thing with these providers with Social Security. That's what they're concerned about.
There's no providers in the context of Social Security.
Not providers. The contractors or the what you were referring to earlier. It's the same thing that happened with Rick Scott with the Medicare.
That's Medicare and Medicaid.
Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Those are the people that are actually ripping off the government.
Incidentally, the IRS is anticipating about $500 billion less in revenues, something like somewhere around 10% to 15% less in revenues because of all the Doge cuts already. The agency has millions of people in its databases who lack recorded dates of death, the result of an old computer system and events that are decades in the past. That doesn't mean they are getting checks. Social Security auditors in 2023 reported that 98% of those without recorded dates of death were not receiving agency benefits and were known to be deceased. Agency officials said it was costlier and riskier to update the records than to do nothing. In other words, it was more efficient and less wasteful, since those people were not getting benefits, to just do nothing than to actually go in and clean those records up. The degree of scrutiny by Social Security's Inspector General can be intense. One report issued by the office earlier this month found that a partner agency in Mississippi had incorrectly made, are you ready for this? A $14 payment because of a data entry error. In other words, the Inspector General's office was so efficient that it caught a $14 error. Social Security's Inspector General was fired in the first days of the Trump administration. Incidentally, one of the other cuts by Doge included funding for University of Wisconsin at Madison study to project to understand how to prevent imposter scams. Government imposter scams, most commonly pretending to be from the Social Security office, resulted in an estimated loss of at least $577 million last year, often by conning seniors into sharing personal data. And then they go in and do this. So it's not recipients who are screwing them over. It is things like, in fact, I did that video from this chair a couple of years ago, 5 years ago. I got a call from a fake Social Security office. And they try and get your Social Security number and this and that. And Doge literally cut a study to try and figure out how to prevent this. And that is the source of a significant amount of fraud, of the tiny amount of fraud that is in the Social Security system, because these people steal people's information and then they get the check sent to the wrong place. If you go to handsoffsocialsecurity.org, you can see Social Security Works is setting up people to rally at their local Social Security offices, because every single congressional member of Congress needs to be pressured because of what they're doing to Social Security. Hat tip to Spocko. Thank you. Here is the confirmation hearing for Trump's Social Security pick, Frank Bisignano, who basically is a corporate raider, I guess you could call him. He's going in and trying to figure out how to privatize Social Security. This is Senator Ron Wyden.
Our nominee has made a career out of taking over troubled businesses and using what I think is a pretty ominous recipe. Gut the company by firing hundreds or thousands of workers, sell off pieces of the business, and merge with another company. That resume and approach ought to concern Americans if somebody is thinking about applying that pattern to Social Security. As I've been saying for weeks now, this approach is a prelude to privatizing Social Security and handing it over to private equity. Every single member of this committee knows that there are ways to strengthen Social Security. But what Social Security does well year after year is to get the checks out the door to seniors that rely on them on time every single month. I'll close by saying improving Social Security doesn't start with shuttering the offices that handle modernization, anti-fraud activities, and civil rights violations. It doesn't start with indiscriminately firing or buying out thousands of workers. And it doesn't start with restricting customer service over the phone and drawing up plans to close field and regional offices. The Musk-Lutnick-Trump plan for Social Security is to take away earned benefits from seniors, hollow out the agency in preparation to hand it over to private equity, and give the savings over to their billionaire friends. The fact of the matter is Social Security could be fully funded for generations to come if you just cracked down on billionaire tax cheats and eliminated the payroll tax cap for millionaires and billionaires.
He goes on to say, here he is where he's questioning
The Doge guy.
the Doge guy.
If you're confirmed, will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases and stop them from exposing millions of Americans who could be damaged?
Pause it for
Sir,
1 second. I just want to make something clear about this dynamic. A court ordered Lee Dudek not to allow Doge into these databases. And that is when Dudek started threatening to shut down the entire Social Security system. And then I think probably either administration people or people in the Senate started saying, hey, dude, you can't do that. We got to do this a lot more sneaky. That's too obvious. Which incidentally, that dynamic, why they got to like chip away at it, slow rolling like they're doing, to undermine the relationship of Social Security to people, to citizens across the country, is exactly why Chuck Schumer's strategy, and I imaginary air quotes there, is such a failure, because he's providing cover. He's literally providing camouflage to them to destroy Social Security, and to do so in such a way that it is far more stealthy
Yeah.
than if Donald Trump supposedly stopped payments, which he wouldn't do. Go ahead.
If you're confirmed, will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases and stop them from exposing millions of Americans who could be damaged?
Sir, I've spent my career protecting PII in the largest institutions. I think it's of the utmost importance for PII to be protected, and yes, I will ensure it's protected.
So will you lock Doge out? It's a very specific yes or no question. Will you lock Doge out of Social Security databases?
I'm going to do whatever is required to protect the information that is private information, so I don't know what lock Doge out means, but there's way more than Doge that can't have access to that information, sir.
I would like that in writing, that you will lock Doge out of the Social Security databases. Will you furnish that in writing?
I don't know what lock Doge out of the Social
Stop
Security.
them. It's got a pretty simple concept. When you lock somebody out, you stop them.
There's lots of databases, but PII will not be exposed.
If you're confirmed,
That sounds like he doesn't want to keep Doge out.
I don't know what you mean, but I know I don't want to affirmatively commit to it right now.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I also cannot agree with trying to figure out what you're talking about. Blind anti-imperialism. If there is only 1% fraud out of trillions of dollars, why didn't the Inspector General ever put a stop to it? Clearly, they were not doing a great job. I can't tell if this is a joke, but first of all, there's not trillions of dollars that are paid out in Social Security annually. I made it clear there wasn't 1% fraud. There were 1% improper payments. How do you know they're improper as opposed to fraud? Because 2/3 of that $9 billion was clawed back. So if you assume the money that all of the money, and this is an assumption, but I will grant it, stipulate it, because you really either are ignorant or being obnoxious about it, and I'm happy to address either. If you assume that 3%, that 1/3, so now we're down to 0.3, is all fraud. The vast majority of that fraud is not from recipients, but from people spoofing other people's Social Security numbers. You would not cut the program that was studying how to stop those. Banks get robbed. Money gets extorted. There's crime everywhere.
Yep.
But to talk about 0.3% of fraud in any type of thing, like your local CVS would beg to have that kind of percentage of loss.
Oh, any private major private entity, like not for nothing, the Pentagon. Like, I mean, what's the percentage of their budget, since they can fail an audit basically every year, that just goes out the window? I mean, I know that's not fraudulent, but it's completely wasted money. Like, the beauty of Social Security is that it's a completely straightforward self-funding mechanism that's easily traceable, and there's always going to be some redundancies and issues when you're dealing with a system this large in a country with well over 300 million people in it. That the fact that that's the rate of whatever fraud or waste is actually fairly miraculous when you compare it to any other institution that would be comparable.
If we could get even double the amount of fraud in Social Security and apply that to every other endeavor in this country, the savings would be astronomical.
Yep.
Astronomical. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.